Hello and welcome to another episode of Popmosis Film, a podcast that looks at films. I am Josiah. I am a writer. I write stuff and I love movies. My background is in writing movies. And so we are joined by our critic and our fan, which different levels of expertise, right? That's your official designation.
I like the awkward pause. You're like, the guy that just is there, like,
and no. Dude.
The reason why is because
I'm
on
like
my screen,
the dude on the couch
I was moving my eyes along the screen to where you're positioned on my screen here as we watch, as we're recording remotely. Obviously, that's why. The pause was no slight to fanhood, but Paul. So how are you doing, bro?
My name is Paul, and I'm the other guy in this podcast. I'm the third wheel.
The fan perspective. We try.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just three different people with awesome.
Yeah, different perspectives. Exactly, different perspectives on the matter. Yeah.
And Tyler, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm excited that we're finally talking about an anime film.
Yes.
Which is,
and this is
really
anime
important for me. And it's anime.
Tyler came up with a super clever title. We talked about doing an animation month, and then we were thinking, April has an A in it, but then Tyler is like, no, I got it. Anime. Brilliant. So
I'm not the only person. Everybody else does it, like Crunchyroll.
Oh, really? I'm not in the loop.
Or our friends at Anime for Humanity. Check out Anime for Humanity. Awesome charity organization.
Tyler, take the credit when you receive it.
Tyler invented cartoons. Everyone, did you know that?
I don't need a letter in the mail. So
yeah.
Hey Tyler, didn't you tell me that you're the Walt Disney of podcasts? I remember you said that in passing.
No. I said that I made Mickey Mouse on a train board.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Makes sense. That makes sense.
Different. Yeah. Morty Mouse, right? Or Mortimer Mouse.
I was gonna call him Bicky Mouse, but the big writer company.
Yeah, Ricky Mouse.
And this skinny guy from Kansas was in the seat behind you and overheard you and stole your idea.
Ronald Buck.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So today we are going to talk about the film Akira. I forgive me, I'm going to say it the sort of American pronunciation. Akira. And yeah, so just out of habit, and then any Japanese names that I say, I apologize in advance. But this is a hugely significant movie for me. It was the first real anime that I ever saw. The very first that I ever saw was actually Speed Racer, the cartoon, which was my very early anime sort of nuggets there. But
I mean, you watched Transformers, didn't you?
That's an American cartoon with some Japanese toys.
Yeah, there's no anime.
Is it now?
It was animated here.
Yeah, it was animated
here.
Was it
really?
Yeah,
it was animated here by Marvel. Yeah.
The movie was animated in Japan.
Yeah. The toys were Japanese before that, but then they brought them over, rebranded them, and then created a cartoon.
Yeah, but it was animated here for sure.
I'll take your word for it. I've always been told that it was anime.
But I didn't get to the significance of the movie to me. I have, my dog is an Akira, which you guys have both had the pleasure of meeting, even though we're remote because of the year of...
Hello there.
He is, being a Japanese breed, we gave him a Japanese name, and specifically for my favorite anime film, Akira, which he's Akira, so I'm going to say, again, if I don't pronounce the Japanese pronunciation, I apologize. But
if you're upset, Josiah's address will be on the bottom, so please send all your hate mail.
Send it to my dog, who is named. He's named, but he is named after this movie. And I know Paul is something that's gonna one up me here that he'll show you guys in a second. But this is the reason I'm showing you this is I don't have a lot of physical media other than like old school VHS tapes for my collection. But this is one of a very few things that I kept. Physically, most everything I just stream it or whatever, but I actually kept this Blu-ray one. We just got rid of most everything we had a few years ago just because we were moving and saving space. So that's how much it means to me. I named my dog after it, and this is one of like Star Wars I have the Lord of the Rings extended cuts. That's like all I have physical media. So that tells you the significance of it.
I misheard you. I thought you said you had a Star Wars dog. I have a I'm kidding.
Eventually, I would love to.
I've only met Akira. Where are the other ones?
I would have a Luke. I'd have a Chewie, which is the obvious dog name. But it's a hugely significant movie for me. So I love it very much. It was a very influential movie for me, and yeah, we'll talk. So what was? Let's go backtrack a little. What was the first anime that you guys saw then? Just out of curiosity, because this was the first feature film anime that I saw.
Okay, feature film anime. First one I watched. I would say My Neighbor Totoro.
Okay.
Yeah, My Neighbor Totoro, or Castle in the Sky. Actually, might be also Castle in the Sky. Unfortunately, it wasn't Nausicaa. Or if we're also counting Dragon Ball, might be also. Or yeah, I think Dragon Ball Z Tree of Might was actually like technically my first one, but that didn't. Maybe that did go to theaters. I can't remember now. Anyway, one of those three.
Actually, so Akira is the second anime I've ever seen. The first one was Robot Carnival, and I actually saw Robot Carnival on the Sci-Fi Channel on the Saturday Night Block, and it was like 1990. And it's interesting that like back in the day, anime was like hard to find. Like you have to really search for it, and the internet didn't exist. And so if you wanted to see this new art form, it's like you really had to go out of your way to find it. And so the first thing I saw was Robot Carnival, and there's one short in it done by Katsuhiro Otomo that he had this big tank that was rolling through the city, and it was shooting all this advertisements at everybody, and it destroyed the town. And it was just like wildly satirical, and I totally got it. And I was like, at the time I was probably like 10, and I just totally loved it. And then I went to Blockbuster. So I'm totally dating myself right now. I went to Blockbuster and I saw the VHS cover of this movie called Akira, and it says Neo Tokyo is about to explode. And I saw the name Katsuhiro Otomo, so I was like, "Hey, let me rent this movie." And I actually have a VHS copy over here of Akira, and this is actually one of the first, either the first or the second.
Throw this in the trash. VHS it's too Blu-ray.
This is like
awesome.
So this is like one of the
That's
first
really rad, though.
Or second printings of this movie on VHS, and you'll see it's done by Streamline Pictures, and I kept it all this time. I personally, I love Akira, and it's one of the most influential movies for me. But I don't like VHS, and so when DVDs came out, I got rid of all my VHS tapes and bought everything DVD. And the only VHS that survived is actually this copy of Akira, because it really is like endearing to me. It's like I really am connected to this film. And so, but every time a new medium comes out, I always buy Akira. I bought it on DVD and like the Steelbook. I bought it on Blu-ray. I bought it in 4K recently. I didn't even wait for the US release. I bought the Japanese version that was like 3 times the price of a regular 4K. But I love this. I love this film, and I am very much attached to it. And I honestly, like at the time of animation, this was before Batman the Animated Series came out, or any like X-Men, the golden age of Disney like didn't even happen yet. And this movie came out. And before that, we had Transformers, we had G.I. Joe, we had all these cartoons that were basically like to sell toys. And like the animation was very good. And even though I'm like very nostalgic for those things, or I enjoy those things, like they don't really hold up. And so when I saw Akira, I was like, what is this? This is like, it just was so amazing. It was like beyond my comprehension of how like great animation can be, you know? And I mean, we'll go into this further, but yeah, I am incredibly attached to this movie in the same way Josiah is attached to this movie. And I mean, honestly, if the only way I can one up Josiah in terms of naming my dog Akira is if I have 2 kids named Tetsuo and Kaneda. but really, I love this film. So
I'll say there was a factor with Akira. We tossed around a lot of names. It was on the car ride when we first got the dog Akira. And we tossed around different names, and I looked up what Akira actually means, and it means bright and intelligent, like the actual meaning of the word itself. And I'm like, that really describes my dog. So I thought that's what we meant. That's why we lean that way. There was other Japanese names we didn't know we wanted a Japanese name. And so I like that you mentioned the Sci-Fi Channel thing, though, because that's where I first saw it. Because, you said, it was hard to come by and hard to find. And I lived in a very small town, so our video store was Christoph's Video Magic at that time, which was actually run by on my dad's side, Christoph is like a family name, so they're related to me. They're like second cousins or something. So we used to get free videos, but I couldn't even get it. They didn't even have it because it was just a small town video store type of thing. So it was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I remember reading it in like fan type magazines at that time about this movie. So I knew it existed, but I finally got to see it. So I'll go through the stats on the production here. It was July 16th, 1988. It opened in Japan. Director Katsushiro Otomo, who also wrote the screenplay with Izuo Hashimoto. I'm doing worse on the Japanese names because I want to do well on them, so I'm doing even worse. It's all in my head now.
You're trying so hard. You're like, I gotta get this out. I gotta get this out, and your brain is just like, nope.
No, totally. And the cool thing with Katsuhiro Otomo, he wasn't even thinking about making a film, but someone approached him about maybe do the rights to it. And that's why he's like, well, then I'll do it myself. If someone's going to do it, I'll just do it myself. It was based on the manga.
Which, honestly, very weird, very rare in anime. Like, a lot of the time, the creator is, like, consultants, like, will help out in the writing room, and then, like, that's it. Like, if you look at, like, Akira Toriyama for Dragon Ball, he has only directed and only been, like, a major part of an OVA in, like, early 90s. And I don't even remember what it was even called. It was and like it's really crazy and awesome for that. Sorry.
No problem. So the manga was began in December of 1982, which is interesting. Again, the year I was born. So again, there was a reference to the previous episode. Actually, I'm crossing my wires here. June through June of 1990. So 8 years of a run and some 2,000 pages. It was then published. It was published at the time in Weekly Young Magazine. Published later in 6 volumes, and it was actually published by Marvel in the United States under the Epic imprint, which I wish I knew as a kid. I wasn't aware of it. And it was also, the movie was revolutionary, because Paul mentioned those Disney movies. Everything you see in this movie was then, this movie did it before those Disney movies did it, including computers and all these animation techniques. They did it first with Akira, and the Disney Golden Age, they would then do it after that. And even in the comic books, it was a revolution. It was the first, for international, they did a colorized version to help sell it to international markets. It was the first digitally colored comic book. So even the comic book was groundbreaking in more ways than just the story and plot and all that. And the animation was obviously very significant.
And you know, the funny thing about the comic book is, like, it was actually, so there's a 6-volume manga series. They were 4 volumes deep before they released the movie. And so, like, basically the movie kind of truncates the whole epic storyline. But there's, like, so much going on in the 6-volume manga series that I highly recommend. If you ever get a chance, just read them, because it really kind of fleshes out the whole story of Akira in new and exciting ways.
In the movie, where the movie ends, it's like, what, the halfway point maybe?
Yeah, maybe like the second or third volume. Like, not even...
Yeah. It's...
Wait, was he ever... I've actually never read the manga, ever. I've never, unfortunately.
Wow. It is.
I've read a little bit of it.
It is.
I read, like, I mean...
It's its own beast.
I absolutely...
like, what you see in the movies
I've
there.
seen the volumes.
But then it goes on and on. There's so much more. Obviously, so many more characters.
I remember there's a part where, like, a clown gang allies with the, like, Kaneda's gang. And then all those different factions, all the radical factions, like, show up as, like, these gangs trying to, like, take control of Neo Tokyo. It's, like, really epic. I highly recommend it. It is so good.
Just real quick, the last thing. It opened in the United States on January 1st, 1990, and it made not much money, but I don't know the size of release at that time. I'm assuming it wasn't a very big release. Like, I have numbers that it made somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million in the U.S. on its initial release. But it only opened at $11,000. When I saw that, I'm like, wow, that's insane that this groundbreaking, I can't say for sure these numbers, but I'm sure they're in the ballpark. That just shocked me. I'm like, wow. But it's a movie that's grown over the years. And again, it was where anime wasn't really a known commodity other than kids' cartoons that would kind of come over every now and again. That this is the movie that changed it. So.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, at the time that this came out, there was really like a vacuum of animation. Like, Walt Disney Studios almost closed down because Michael Eisner wanted to save money, and the studio hasn't been profitable for like a long time. And this was like right before the golden age of animation, and all the new creative talent were being like pushed out. Like John Lasseter, he did a test for Where the Wild Things Are. It was like this pitch for computer animation. And he showed it to the execs and got fired. And he was pushed away to Pixar. Same with like Brad Bird. Tim Burton was fired. Like, all the new talent that kind of with the 9 old men passed the torch to were being forced out of Disney Studios. So they were in a bad spot. And so like they left this vacuum of like where animation was not in a good place at that time. And so you had this movie that just like hit like a nuclear bomb and really like changed the game, changed the landscape of animation in all countries.
And I realize I totally undersold Paul at the beginning of this episode. The fan thing, that's just kind of like our marketing ploy here. But Paul is studying animation. Paul knows animation. So he's a greater resource than either Tyler and I in terms of animation and things like that. So
I was born in animation.
I'm like, we try to use our Popmosis sort of tagline, how we, the sort of pithy little, hey, this is what we are. But Paul is really a great resource in that regard, and I that's why I love that we don't talk about a ton of animated movies, so it's cool from that perspective too that Paul will have that kind of insight for us. So.
Absolutely. So, Paul, how did they make this movie shot by shot? Let's go through every single shot and you tell me exactly how.
I think it's 160,000 individual cells.
It's magic.
I'll tell you, this movie was animated on once. The animation in this movie is like so fluid because it was animated on once. They drew every single thing, all the mechanics, all the when Tetsuo is getting that MRI or whatever, and the way the mechanism rotates and scales, and like they hand drawn all of that. They hand drawn all the smoke effects, all the rubble falling, all hand drawn. And like this movie, like you could teach a whole class on this one movie. This movie is like a masterpiece. But go ahead.
When I was taking film class and we were discussing animation, the ones that the professor said that were basically like the big milestones for animation were Pinocchio, Akira, and I don't like the movie Prince of Egypt, because Prince of Egypt was like that big merge of CG and CG and 2D animation together, and like such a big whatever that thing. I'm not a big fan of that film at all, but like technically it is amazing. But Akira is so beautiful. It's so gorgeous.
Absolutely.
It was also the first film for me that showed me, like, Disney had been, it's an adult can watch it, but it's not fundamentally for an adult. This is the first time. I was still a kid when I saw it. I probably saw it whenever it first aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, as I discussed, maybe 92, 93, somewhere in that range. So I was 10, 11 years old probably when I finally saw this, and it just blew me away because it was so mature and grown up. And at that time, we finally did have the Batman animated series and things, so the influence had started to trickle down. But this, for me, was just shocking in a good way, that how intense and how graphic it was. It was just different. It was, it wasn't like the violence, it relatively tame compared to some anime that goes leans heavily into that. But for me at the time, I would see things like Disney where everything's off camera if there is any violence. Bambi, where you hear the shot kind of thing, you don't see anything. And that's very impactful, but this was like shocking for me.
Yeah. And like the nuance of this world and the world building and the they put so much detail into it. Like when there's a board meeting with the Supreme Council, you see a guy dozing off in the background. Like they put so much detail into everything, and it's really impressive. And the thing is, the themes of this movie are eerily familiar, especially with everything that happened last year. It really resonates on a whole new level, and in a way that they couldn't anticipate in 1988. I love this movie so much, and it's like, anyway, I'll stop talking. I feel like I'm gushing too much.
I agree. Like it's weird. It's weird 2 years ago that Tokyo was just like this movie. It's insane. I mean, I don't remember any of these events happening. I'm just joking. I was just making a stupid.
Well, there were the Olympics that were
space laser.
The Olympics were delayed in Tokyo. They said it was COVID, but I think it's because Tetsuo and Kaneda had their fight in Olympic Stadium and they trashed the place.
I know. I don't. Yeah.
Anyway, so I want to talk. One of the things I want to talk about is we can go on and on about the animation, the visual style, how much it means to us, all those things, how we named our dogs and our children after it and its characters. But what do
all
you guys...
8 of my kids, right? All Canada's.
Yeah.
Go back to your cages. Anyway, is that the dog or the kids? Hey, my dog doesn't sleep in a cage. I saw this thing on Instagram about like how in like cities in like the 1930s, like they had window cages for babies to be like sleep in and they could get fresh air. It was like horrifying to see. Anyway,
what?
But I just look it up. It's a thing. It was weird.
It's hilarious.
So the thing that's most always stands out that for this movie is there's no true hero in it in a traditional sense. If you look in terms of archetype, like Kaneda is your protagonist and Tetsuo are your two main characters. They're not really a hero. They're kind of, Kaneda, if anything, is very much an anti-hero, and obviously Tetsuo becomes a bad guy. What do you guys think of the dynamic of those two characters? Because I think it's awesome, and it's what makes the film work beyond just being a beautiful work of art.
Yeah, it's strange. Like they're not like friends, but they're like brothers. Like they're in the gang and stuff like that, like in a biker gang and stuff, and every single relationship and every single thing that they do in this movie is unlike most things that I've seen in anime. Like there's of course we all know that this has influenced an ungodly amount of things, but like for this time, for other movies that came out around this time, and let's even compare this to Blade Runner and other things of sci-fi that are relatively like this, or at least have some familiar that cover some familiar territory in it. It has all these relationships between characters that I've never really seen before, where you have everybody is connected, but they're not like super connected. It's all on just like experiences, or just like, hey, we're in a gang and the world kind of sucks, and it just kind of keeps going, and everybody kind of keeps coming back to each other, like everybody does, and the female character, what's her name?
Kay, I think.
Yeah, Kay.
Yeah, May. Kay. Yeah, and so I don't know. It's a weird movie. It's a really weirdly done film with some crazy different pacing and character development, which it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
So yeah, I actually really love the characterization of Kaneda and Tetsuo, their friendship, their brotherly love. It's sort of like a it's like a antagonistic rivalry between the two of them. Like Tetsuo obviously looks up to Kaneda as a bigger brother, and Kaneda's always the one to kind of protect Tetsuo, and because Kaneda is kind of like the alpha male in a way, Tetsuo kind of he resents him in a way. He kind of resents him and resents like that big brother kind of that big brother relationship with him, And so I really like that sort of antagonistic brotherhood between the two of them, and that really drives the narrative in the movie. And I don't know. I just that relationship is so strong, and it's so nuanced and so well done. To be honest with you, like when I heard like the Star Wars prequels are coming out, I honestly assumed that the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan would have been a lot like this relationship. How Anakin is like gifted in the way Tetsuo is, but he can't control his power, and Obi-Wan's like the bigger brother that's kind of holding him down and sort of Anakin kind of like looks at it the wrong way. And so I thought that the relationship between the two would have been that nuanced, but it ended up not being that way. But anyway, I just, whenever I think of how would you write a good relationship between two brotherly characters, I go to this. I go to Tetsuo and Kaneda because it's so well done.
Yeah, I think I relate to it so much because I'm the younger brother. I am Tetsuo in this dynamic, and I want to be Kaneda, Tetsuo. Like we can yell their name for like half the movie, which is great, but a lot of that. So, but
that's most anime where it's just characters yelling at each other, yelling their names at each other.
Yelling their names.
It's so true.
So, but I can relate so much to him and his journey, and I really understand how he is corrupted by this power that he doesn't understand and can't control and is overwhelmed by. I get it. That's what works for me so well in this movie. And then Kaneda, I love there's a line late in the movie where, I think I wrote it down. They're gonna take him out, like they know they have to kill him, and he's like, the revolutionary's like, but Tetsuo, he goes, Tetsuo is our friend, not yours. If someone's going to kill him, it should be us. I just thought that was so powerful and such a great statement of the relationship. I love him. He might hate him at times, like that brother thing. I might hate him at times, and I can't stand him, but I always love him. No matter what he does, I love him. And if he's gonna die, I should be the one to do it. That's only fair. It shouldn't be, it's a very powerful dynamic. One thing that was really cool, I watched an interview with Katsuhiro Otomo, and he was talking about the influences of American movies. And he talked about a lot of 70s movies, like Easy Rider, obviously, which you can see the influence. He talked about Bonnie and Clyde, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, all these 70s anti-hero type of movies. And when I heard that, I'm like, it was like revelatory for me, because I saw the dynamic in the characters that no one's a pure hero. And even Tetsuo, even though he becomes a bad guy, he's not a pure bad guy. Even the Colonel, who's kind of the most pure bad guy in the movie, he's just also kind of doing what he thinks is right to protect people. It's the dynamic, is his perspective. And it does a really good job of everyone is coming at this very bizarre situation from a different perspective of different goals. And the thing that holds it together, though, is that family of Tetsuo and the rest of the gang, but Tetsuo and Kaneda in particular, they're brothers, absolutely brothers. And I think that's brilliant what you said, Paul, about the relationship, how if Anakin and Obi-Wan would have had that dynamic, it would have really been so much more powerful, because they tried and didn't necessarily succeed at that. But that's what really carries this movie, even still today, for me, is despite all the beautiful window trappings, when you have that story that all these big crazy things are going on, it's fundamentally a story of two people who love each other. They might not always like each other and get along, but they love each other. And they'll be there for each other, even if it's that sort of extreme circumstance of he's going to die and he has to be stopped. I'll be the one to do it. That was really powerful. It's something that's always resonated for me.
And even going along with that, it's like when Tetsuo can't control his power and he's turning into that blob monster, he keeps on saying Kaneda because he wants Kaneda to help him. And that's like in his time of need, he goes to Kaneda, even though he sort of hates him. Like he's the one that helps him. It's such a nuance. It's like so nuanced, so well done.
Yeah, he's like a great tragic figure. His fall, it's so powerful and sad. And even the girl, Tetsuo's girl that he kills. Yeah, that it's so heartbreaking because he doesn't want to do it. He can't control himself. He physically, he's just it's the power is out of control.
Yeah,
because it was just. And it's also so. By the way, Judy has never seen the movie. She has a dog named after this movie, and she's never seen it. And we're watching it last night, and she goes, "Whoa, this movie's pretty scary." And we're talking about specifically the scene in the hospital when Tetsuo's in there, and the animal, the bear, the little bears are walking and stuff, and it forms together into the teddy bear thing. I'm like, yeah, it's scary. And she's like, you saw this when you were a kid? I'm like, yeah, it scared me then, and I was. But that's the power of the movie, and I think that what works is we're talking about how Tetsuo gets overwhelmed by the sensation of his power, and the movie overwhelms you in the right way with all this sensory information to you kind of feel what he's feeling. I thought that's something that the movie succeeded as well, that you really go on that ride with Tetsuo in that way.
Absolutely. And so I'm kind of curious, with you, Tyler, is watching this movie, how, like the legacy of it, like how is it, how does it sit with you compared to somebody that, watched it for the first time and that's their first exposure to anime? Like you watched a bunch of other anime before you got to this. So how is your relationship with it? Has it changed?
Yeah, I actually watched this in college, way later on. At this point, I had already watched all of Ghost in the Shell that was out. I mean, I'd watched so many other anime movies, and for some reason, my friends and I just never really wanted to watch Akira because of its long runtime. And I finally sat down, and I was talking about earlier was we did a whole class where we talked about Pinocchio. So I went back and rewatched Pinocchio, and I watched Akira for the first time. Because at that point, we did have the mail in Netflix, and I was like, screw it, let's do it. And I watched it with my roommate, and yeah, it was unbelievable. And but I mean, like I grew up with like watching other things that are relatively like it, like at least with content, not, you know, they're not the same movie at all. But like I watched like, you know, Paprika, Ghost in the Shell,
Evangelion, like the grown up sort of tone. You mean, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Perfect Blue, I had already seen before Akira, which is really strange that I watched that before. So like, and you know, and of course like other things like Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, which are also very dark as well. Not as dark as any of these films, like Evangelion or this or Ghost in the Shell. But I had watched other stuff already, and not only just anime movies, but also just anime like watching all of Hellsing and other things that are really dark and messed up, Paranoia Agent and stuff. So it didn't faze me as well with like the contents of it. However, it's just the year that it was made is amazing. Like, I mean, you know, it was made after Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, which is an unbelievably gorgeous film. But not to knock anything, not to knock Studio Ghibli or you know, or oh my god, why am I forgetting Miyazaki? But this is a much better and more technical film than any of the Studio Ghibli movies that had already come out yet. Like I think a lot of people also think that, you know, Spirited Away was like the one that just like really put Ghibli on the map, you know, internationally, and was the one that kind of showed, okay, now this is like real art. I think Akira is art and also a good sci-fi movie and also a little bit of a horror movie. Like it has like all these different elements in it, where Totoro is like a really kiddie kind of movie. Castle in the Sky is like a nice adventure, but you already have Disney movies that are like it. You know, it's not treading too many new waters. Like, you know, it's hitting some similar beats of Disney, which is why he was called the Disney of Japan.
Yeah.
And then he made Spirited Away, and everyone's like, "Oh, never mind." And so, and like I love Spirited Away, but like, you know, that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like everybody saw Miyazaki as like the Disney of Japan, so all of the movies that came out were very Disney-like. Akira is unlike anything else, you know, that came over here, that that had the type of content, that had the type of characters in it, that had you know, the visuals and the way that they filmed it, like all the like all the backgrounds moving and stuff like that. Like when they're on a plane and like you see the camera moving and you see the background shake with it as well, and it's like so unbelievably, because like what they'll do on that is they just move, you know, they just put the thing down for one frame and then they just move it up, and then they have the machine that goes, they have the machine that goes all like that, that's like layered with all the background stuff where it just slowly moves up, that Walt Disney Studios created.
The multiplane, right?
Multiplane camera.
camera.
The multiplane. So that's also moving, which means that they're actually moving the camera each time. The problem with that was when you move the camera, how the hell do you put the camera back and make sure that it's perfect like it was before? So when you continue on to the, and, you know, and it's not all messed up. Like, there's a lot of things in this movie that are unbelievably, like crazy, that I don't, and which is why I think like this is such a staple since Pinocchio, like 50 years earlier, you know, like there's that huge gap. It goes from like, you know, from Pinocchio in 1940s, 1930s, and then this in 1980s, and then 1996 for Prince of Egypt. Like that small gap was like a big thing, and then the one before it's like decades. Like it's strange.
I think because what you have is Disney from Pinocchio on. We know what we do well. We know how to do our way, and we just did it until it's
and they
out of
reuse
date.
a lot of the character.
They use the animation exactly. They would
So that's my little rant.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like this movie doesn't cut corners and it doesn't streamline anything, and it's labor intensive. When they made this movie, it's like labor intensive, and they just it's insane. It's like I honestly think that if they tried to do this again, this movie wouldn't get past like previs because it's so just off kilter. It's so unconventional in the tone and the story, and like it wouldn't. I don't think it would, like really get. I don't think it would have been made actually if it was a project pitched today.
I highly disagree. Anime has been so experimental lately. Like, I mean, we're seeing. I mean, Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is a really messed up anime, and it's the #1 anime even for kids, and it is a really dark, messed up anime. Look at Attack on Titan. I'm not a big fan of Attack on Titan, but the thing is, like, that's also was #1 for a while, and is a milestone of anime. And those are just the shows. Now, if you look at the anime movies, oh my god, the things that they're doing with anime movies. Like, you have things like Beastars, which is another show. I'm not saying that that's a movie or anything. Now, I would say, actually, I'm surprised they haven't remade or even considered even doing like a sequel to this movie yet.
They are.
Well, I know they're making a live action remake, but I don't know.
They're making a sequel series with.
Oh, I didn't know it was a sequel series. I thought it was just a remake.
Otomo, yeah.
Oh, really?
And then Taika Waititi is attached to do a live action version. But that's separate from that.
Wow.
I mean, do you think that they could make a sequel and have it live up to the promise of this?
I doubt it, but the fact that it's the original creator who create the one caveat with that I'll say is what we talked about earlier with the manga is it's great and there's so much content in there. I don't know that the follow-up would be necessarily what you see there, but that's the reason, part of why I'd be interested in a live-action version is if you're telling me it's a live-action remake of this film, maybe I don't want to see that, but if it's a live-action adaptation of that epic, super long volume of manga, that's something I'd be interested in. And so, therefore, there's still material that even the filmmaker created in his own comic that Katsuhiro Otomo didn't even use in the movie. So there's like 1,000 pages worth of stuff for him to tap into. So that's why I would say potentially that it could possibly work.
Yeah,
but it could never have the impact that it had though. And I think what Tyler's saying is a good point. And maybe it could get made today. But one thing that's interesting to think about is this is the movie that brought all the other movies that they exist, especially here in the United States. This was the movie that legitimized anime as a format in the United States. This is the movie that really is the watermark that changed things just in that regard. Not just in terms of the animation and all the artistry behind it, but just it was when it came over the United States, it didn't do huge theatrical, but then when it was released on VHS and then later on DVD, it has had that consistent sort of legacy in that way. So it's interesting to think, and I really appreciate Tyler's perspective having seen it later, because he's seeing all these things that wouldn't have come over here had that not come out first. That's the really interesting thing.
Yeah, like there are a bunch of like really like they go off on unlike really weird anime movies have come out recently. Like in the last 6 years, there's a movie that's literally called Genocidal Organs. That's the name of the movie. Ooh. Like it's the final it's the final of a trilogy. So anime lately has been extremely experimental, from doing like really slice of life stuff and talking about like bullying for once, and like the with the silent voice and stuff like that. And anime is so, which is why I love anime so much. It is finally touching and doing the craziest things that I never thought, that we will never see in America probably, or at least for a very long time with animation, unless it's like self-funded.
Not mainstream stuff. I gotcha. Yeah, you're not going to get it produced by Warner Brothers. Like
Anomalisa from Spike Jones.
Yeah.
All the spikes.
I know an animator that worked on that too. Does stop motion.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that even though you've seen Akira a little bit later, that it hasn't dulled its impact, that it still resonates really well with you, and that it because you've seen things that are like it, but it hasn't dulled the impact at all. Like a testament to the movie itself that it's able to do that.
I think it's because it was so influential that will always ring true to me. And like, I think anybody who watches it, because there's a lot of weight to this movie. It is something that seems familiar, and then of course you look or you realize the date the movie was made, and like, and then you look back at the things that followed it, like Chronicle or like a bunch of other shit that desperately tried to retell this story, and you're just like, see, like it's amazing how much better and quality, but not only that, but like every single scene you're seeing so much, like what you're saying, every layers of animation in one frame, and like in like 10 frames you'll see like art from probably like 10 different artists, where nowadays it's like one artist will do like 100 like 300 to 500 frames now by themselves. We're like, in this thing they're just like, okay, your job is the smoke from these frames to this frames today, your job is the sparks from this frame to this frame. Like, this movie is just
and the thing is,
unbelievable,
though, that you're doing all this, even though this had one of the first times you had a computer generated image with his that circular thing that shows Tetsuo's power flow thing. That was groundbreaking in that, but everything else just hand drawn animation. That's the most amazing thing. Everything else, these effects that look like things that would for sure be done now, like at least enhanced with a computer in animation, even in like cell animation, that would just, it wouldn't, even cell animation doesn't get made the way this movie got made anymore. It's just how everything has changed. So it looks so much more distinct and beautiful for that as well. That's just, again, and that's the power of the movie, though. It holds up visually and it holds up in terms of story. There's so many layers of why it works. That's why I think it's a truly great film. Like, I wouldn't name my dog after a lesser movie.
Absolutely.
Well, man, I shouldn't have named my dog Ponyo then. I'm kidding. Wow.
My favorite movie, though, we had an episode. I'm going to name, if I get another dog, I'm going to say, hey, Empire Strikes Back. That is my favorite movie. So
hey, Hoth. No, I want to say one thing, and give, like, there's one technical thing, and there's one thing in this movie, especially watching it today, that I don't think it hit me very hard last time, because ever since then I've loved and studied a lot more about animation, and a lot of my friends in college were in animation, like a lot of them. I have a ton of friends who are in animation today, and the one thing that is so fascinating in this movie that I haven't seen in other anime or here is you always see the eyes, like where the eyes are going. Always. They don't just like in anime where they'll just be like right here one frame, and the next frame they're looking over here because something happens. Like, the eyes are constantly moving like a normal human's eyes. And it's something, and like, it's like little details like that is strange, and it really dives me into this movie. Again, like I was saying, like the weight of this movie, but it's really strange. I don't see that. You just kind of just see an anime, they'll be looking over here, and then the next frame they're like, over there, and their eyes are in completely different places. But you always see the trail of where the eyes are going to, or where the focus is in this movie. I don't think I've actually realized that in any other anime movie. Now I want to go back and watch a ton of them and see if they do the same thing. But but I can definitely say that there are nowhere near as like realistic or as like prominent like in this movie, because this movie has a lot of close-ups on the face. So even
in the beginning, the light streaking of the motorcycles, like that's something that effect is not something that's done. The tail light. Yeah, that's something that's usually not done. That little detail, the little nuances.
And the transparency in animation, like hand-drawn animation, that's amazing art. Amazing art.
Yeah, and even the way the motorcycles move through the cityscape and it skids. And like, I love that how he like that camera angle where he skids to a stop, and then kind of there's like a little bit of overlap into the camera. And to be honest with you, like, if you're an animation student, watch this movie, because this is like it's insane. With Frank and Ollie, they have the 12 principles of animation. This like covers all of them, like squash and stretch, appeal, overlapping action, arcs, anticipation. All of that. This is like a perfect, like a masterclass in animation. So, and the thing with this movie is like, this movie is about 2 hours and like 5 minutes. It took me 5 hours to finish this movie because I just kept on pausing and just marveling at like the little nuances of this movie and like the little touches that they did. And Like even like
pausing like that, Paul. You're gonna ruin your VHS.
Oh, I know, right? There's gonna be tracking lines all over it. But it's insane. I just it's funny. Like we're doing we're doing a show talking about Akira. We're gushing about it, and it's like very incongruous with what you usually do with YouTube and a lot of internet stuff. It's like we're just glowing, just like
I'm gonna name my dog after a movie I hate next time.
Yeah,
just to be ironic.
So where's that where's Josie? Where's?
But for me, I want to share one thing that one of the most powerful moments in any movie I've ever seen is in this film, and it's like there's a lot of beauty in it in the animation and the story, but this is a true character moment that always got me like when I was a kid. I remember it and it stood out. So there's the scene where Kaneda is following Kei, right? And she is going into like the sewer or whatever, and he's up high, and there's a guy that's trying to get the drop on her. And he jumps down on the guy, but he like misses and falls in the water, and he's a heap, and that guy is going to probably kill Kaneda, so she has to pull her gun and shoot that guy to save Kaneda. Because he'd already like saved her at the, brought her with her when their gang was arrested and stuff. And that moment, how brutal, like that destroyed her. It was such a powerful, sad, and I remember it and it affected me, and it's still, every time I watch it, the animation, again, the animation to the point of serving not just like story and beauty, but character. It's so good the way she is so broken by having to have killed someone to save that person. Really, really catches me every time. That's the one thing I had in my notes that I'm like, I want to touch on that moment. If I don't say anything else, that's the one thing that I wanted to hit on.
Absolutely. Like that part really like stuck with me I did at that time pause it, and I was like, that's crazy. Like the look in her eyes, that sense of regret, and that's amazing just to like capture that. And not only that, to really what really punctuates it is that the camera lingers on the dead soldier, and his body just kind of sinks into the sewer, and when the blood is, and it's just like, holy shit! Like the impact of that, the gravity.
One of the things I noticed is like with that's a great example. There's points where the world and the physicality of things have weight to it that you don't see in animation all the time. That helps you then, even though it's so beautiful, kind of forget you're watching something that's animated because you're just on that. And then, at least for me, I can just be consumed by the story because it seems so real, even though it's clearly not. It's such a powerful dynamic that this movie achieves so well. So, segueing into, what do you think the legacy, we've kind of touched on it here and there, but what is the legacy of this film?
I mean, anything sci-fi, like Matrix, anything. But
the Matrix is one that was like that I didn't realize until like I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, now I totally see it when somebody like else said it.
Can I go back and
Sure.
actually like what you were saying, like the weight, like I actually what I noticed is anytime anybody's either overpowered or getting like hurt, there is this I hate to keep saying this word, but it's like the best word. So much weight to it, like the part where Canada or Canada, whoever say his name.
Canada. They love Eugene Levy.
Kaneda. When Kaneda is basically beating up that guy that they and like kicking and beating the shit out of him. I'm like, you don't want to kill him, do you? Like after like he rips the shirt off of.
Tetsuo was beating him up, right?
Yeah.
Tetsuo, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Tetsuo was beating him up.
Gotcha.
And like that, like in that scene of like when he's just beating the crap out of him up, and just kicking and kicking and kicking him, and everyone's like, and you're kind of seeing him become more and more and more aggressive and a lot more, evil, I guess ish. Not really, because I mean, again, the guy's a scumbag and needed to get his ass kicked, but but like that scene is really demented. Everyone's just like, hey, you're gonna kill him, like, and he just doesn't care. He's just like, well, maybe it's better this way, or whatever his line is.
Yeah, something like that. And it's one of those movies. Sorry to interrupt, but that the Easy Rider type of thing, that it feels very real. That could be, if this was just a movie about a biker gang without the telekinetic powers and all of that. That was this scene you would see in a movie and be impactful and effective. That's Sons of Anarchy. No, and that's one of those scenes that stands out too. Is really powerful. Obviously, the horror that they were going to do to the girl, and
Yes.
Oh
my God.
The gravity of that in an animated film, for me, that was shocking, again, in a good way, because it obviously didn't happen, but the power of what that does emotionally to her and what that does emotionally to Tetsuo too. That he couldn't protect her, so that then he leans so heavily into the power that it destroys him and corrupts him. It's like, that's real in a very fantastical movie.
And you know what? The interesting thing is like the way the Tetsu's behavior is very much a symptom of that time they live in. It's like the government is collapsing, and all these like radicalized factions are taking control over like the population's mindset. Like you have that weird that one lady with the afro or whatever, like that big puffy hair.
Oh yeah, like Lady Miyaka or something.
Yeah, and she has a faction, and then there's the group led by the tiny guy that Ryu goes to. Like there's all these different factions, and like the Supreme Council's not really like they're falling asleep. They're not really aware of what's going on, and so the military is kind of like taking over this society, like this dystopia that's basically collapsing. And so and there's no parental figures or anything like that. Like everybody's kind of left to their own devices. The kids, like, they pop all those pills just to kind of like get by. And like even when they're in the classroom, there's like no teacher, nothing. It's just like this huge utopia. So like a lot of Tetsuo, his behaviors is a symptom of that. But his only source of comfort and coping is Kaneda, and his people and his biker gang. And so like that's why there's such a tight knit group, is because that's how they survive, is they find solace in each other. And and so it's interesting. Like there's so much that there's so many layers into this movie that are very just that resonate so well, and like really inform who the characters are, and helps you understand the world they live in. And so the funny thing about this is, like, I saw this movie way before Blade Runner. I saw it, I don't know, I think 91. I think, like 91 or so, or 90. And I didn't see Blade Runner till I was like 2001 or 2002 in a film class. And I remember, I totally forgot about this, but it reminded me that the first time I saw Blade Runner, I was like, oh, cool, this is like Akira. And
flipped.
Yeah, it flipped the other way. And to me, I'm maybe I'll kind of get some shit for this, but I think, in my opinion, I think this film's more nuanced, and I think this film's more nuanced and more complex, and visually and thematically rich than Blade Runner, even though it's kind of directly inspired by Blade Runner. And this is the first time I saw this movie after taking classes in animation, and I just appreciate it on a whole other level that I didn't really understand before. And so this really just resonates more with me, and I appreciate it way more than I did before.
It's a milestone film. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, not even just for animation or anime. It's a milestone film in itself.
Yeah.
And very extremely influential. And like I said before, like with Chronicle, like that that movie, like this movie, I don't want to see a live action of it. I just don't. God, no.
I mean, I don't know how they could do it justice, but I mean, we'll see. Taika Waititi is a good, he's a good director, great talent.
It's one of the things where when I hear, I'm like, no, I hear his name, I'm like, well, maybe.
It's not like it's Mick G, or something like that. Yeah. It's not like it's
Michael Bay producing.
Yeah, Michael Bay or Brett Ratner. It's not like one of those.
Oh God.
I just want to say, so talking about the legacy of the movie, we kind of touched on it here and there, but I want to real quick say the legacy of the movie for me in a personal sense is, this is one of the films that's very significant in showing me as a storyteller and a writer how to create a fantastical world that's very real and very powerful. And it all comes down to characters underneath that live in that world. And I think that the characters here are so strong and so real. And for me, I don't know that there's any other animation, at least in my opinion, that matches the reality and the gravity of it. And that's where the legacy is for me as a writer, that I return to this movie in that sense of, okay, you have this fantastical world that's a cartoon also that feels completely real. Because of the characters, the way they exist in that world, the way they move, the way they act, what their motivations are. Whichever dub you like, if you like the dub or the sub, whatever you prefer. Regardless of that, the through line of the story, it's just so real. And I think that that's always something that strikes me with this movie, because it's so sensational, but it's the reality of it, that the character motivations behind that sensational stuff that really impacted me personally and still influences my writing. If anything gets super fantastical, it's like, okay, how do you ground it too at the same time? And this movie achieves that, where a lot of similar type movies just fail. Even if they're really cool looking, like something like The Matrix or something, for me, that doesn't ever feel grounded and real. Just for me. But for maybe other people it does, but this always feels grounded and real.
Yeah. I agree with all that. Yeah, this is awesome. Good movie. This movie's awesome. Watch this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, if you haven't, for sure.
Watch this movie and then watch Ghost in the Shell.
Paul?
I mean, as far as legacy, do you want... should we reference like the influence it had on specific movies?
Yeah, no, that's part of it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's funny in regards to the influence. Like, you know, obvious one, Stranger Things with 11. That's an obvious one. Matrix, South Park. There's so many things out there that owe a debt of gratitude to this movie. And in fact, it's funny that so one movie. So visually, like what I love about this movie is how the Neo Tokyo has all these neon lights all over the place. Like, it's very visually distinct dystopia. And I was watching Godzilla vs. Kong yesterday, and when Godzilla and Kong were fighting, they were actually in Hong Kong, and it had the visual look of Akira. It had the bright, vibrant neon lights aesthetically like Akira. So it's like, even in something that's so remote and removed from this movie, still it is influenced by Akira. So I just want to point that out. It's like, it's so influential, like 40 years, you know, like, yeah, over 40 years later, it's still...
40?
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My brain's going, no.
So I was just happy to watch it again. I haven't watched it in a while, because that's one thing I love about this podcast. Because I have kids, I don't always have time to watch things that I've seen already. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get the time to revisit them. So this is an opportunity for me to revisit something I absolutely love, which was awesome. So thank you guys for...
Which was Josie and the Pussycats, I know.
Yeah, I feel like
it was one. As I said in the last episode, I watched it. I won't watch it again. The thing is now, like, Judy will be like, let's watch Josie and the Pussycats right now. My wife will, like, literally make me watch that now. Because I told her I think she'd like it.
Okay.
I just want to say one more thing. I don't know. For me, I feel like it redefined the pop culture landscape. And for me, this movie is more influential to me than Star Wars. And I didn't realize that until watching it again, how much it really influenced me, and like how a lot of my sensibilities and like the way
the way you yell your friends' names, things like that.
I do. I go, Josiah!
Like, Paul!
Yeah. And I, honestly, like, my love of Japanese culture starts with this movie. Like, this is my first foray into Japanese culture. This is the reason why I went to Tokyo. Like, it all stems from this movie. So this one movie just really influenced my life. And so, honestly, it means so much to me. And I'm so glad we covered it. And I'm glad I got to, share my thoughts with you two. And, I feel I see you as brothers, so you're like the Tetsu and Kaneda.
You're gonna kill me then?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, but I do it out of love.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I'll do it with a space laser or something.
Oh, man.
I'm just gonna do it.
Alrighty, and on that note, Josiah, where can they find more?
So you can find me at Josiah is Right, as in writer, WRITE. And also, Paul and I did a video a little while back where after he went to Japan, we went through a bunch of collectibles he got. So that actually kind of connects to this movie. You had the little tiny Kaneda and the bike you got there. So check out that video for some of Paul's experiences.
Put it in the link. Put it in the link below.
Yes, please do that. And also, we're giving away t-shirts, so be sure to subscribe to my channel and subscribe here at the Grand Geek Gathering, and you could potentially win a t-shirt, Popmosis, or Grand Geek Gathering, or Josiah is right. We'll see. Maybe you can win one.
Absolutely. And Paul, where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram at Arcade Blackfire. And actually, I want to show that I'm wearing a Akira t-shirt to kind of commemorate.
It's not Mardi Gras.
I'm gonna go. I go get my dog, but he's too far.
Show the beads, yeah.
Akira.
I know, but yeah.
Absolutely. And if you like this content, please subscribe and like this video, and check out all of our other videos on our YouTube, or go to our website, thegrandgeekgathering.com, for our articles, our other videos, our podcasts, and so much more. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/thegrandgeekgathering. Also, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so please follow us there as well, and join our Discord. Our music has been provided by Carla Laurent. Have a wonderful week. Wear a mask, and... Tetsuo!
Gardena!
Walk on the silver screen. Takes you wouldn't believe. Grand Geek Gathering.